Welcome to Just Picture It. Tonight we're looking at the role that colleges and universities play in our communities. We'll be looking at the idea of public service and whether our institutions of higher learning can play a key role in improving society. This is also the very first show where we welcome our artist in residence, Eileen Clegg, a fellow of the Royal Society of the Arts. She will be helping guide the visualizations for Just Picture It. Our guest tonight is Brian Donohue, the CEO and founder of the Enterprise Group. Brian started in the U.S. Army, where he rose to the rank of captain and then changed professions. He worked as a high technology and intellectual property trial attorney for 20 years before he began directing the University of California at Berkeley's Business Contracts Office. Under his leadership, he oversaw the work of 3 attorneys over a period of 15 years and personally signed about 10,000 public service contracts, which brought in $1 billion to the university. Brian has taught intellectual property law for 18 years and holds a JD and MBA from George Washington University in information technology. Welcome, Brian.
Maylin, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
So, Brian, you're introducing us to a new type of engagement that universities can play at this time of disruptive change. What is that?
Well, we're calling it public service contracts. And may we have the first graphic? Simply, it is taking the assets of colleges and universities, putting them in service to the public under the terms of a written contract. It is really that elementary. And what I'd like to do is take you through each of the terms. We're going to talk about assets, we're going to talk about public service, and we're going to be talking about contracts. So what are the assets of a university? Could we have the second slide, please? The university is a place of great aspirations, and it has a long history of spirit. Next slide, please. But its assets are the laboratories, the specialized equipment, the libraries, the curriculum, the intellectual property, the computer programs. Those are hard assets. Okay, what other assets? Well, you have the human assets. You have the faculty, men and women who have dedicated their lives to study, to teaching, and to public service. We have the staff. The great unsung heroes of universities and colleges are the staff, because equally so, they are people who have dedicated their long careers in the service of education, learning, research, and public service. But then you have all those special relationships that we connect to a university. The alumni. Next slide, please. You have the parents. You have the benefactors. These human assets are so enormous. So that's the assets we're talking about. Okay, now let's talk about in service to the public. This kind of activity, let me tell you what it's not. It is not for any private commercial gain, period. It is not for competitive service. It is not where a university can lower a price for services because they don't have to pay taxes. What I'm talking about is not research contracts. Now, we all have, particularly in this area, know about research contracts. I'm not talking about research contracts. I'm not talking about or describing what I would call student enrichment contracts, which might be internships or those kinds of contracts where the students are the beneficiaries. The beneficiaries here are, in fact, what we call the public. Let's talk about written contracts for a second. The agreement is between the college or university and some other legal entity. It could be a community group, it could be a community nonprofit, it could be a school district, it could be a county, it could be, of course, huge number of contracts with the state. Federal contracts, we all know about. It can be foreign institutions like of higher education, foreign governments. So it's an open-ended ability to enter into contracts. Again, I want to repeat, it's not research, it's not student engagement. What it is, frequently people can call it a fee for service. But what we've learned, a service is typically, when you say for a fee, that's cash. But it can be for exchanging of equipment, exchanging of services. It can be barter, it can be trade. So we'll go into some examples, but in fact, these contracts are subject to the Public Records Act and the Freedom of Information Act, and basically that's what a public service contract is.
So what you're talking about is the idea that universities are in service to the public.
Yes.
And that are ways for those universities to be in service to the public, which we could take advantage of in order to help us innovate at this time of great change.
Absolutely. Let me give you some examples.
Okay.
Okay. Can we bring up the slide with the infectious disease? This is in this day of...
so next graphic, great.
Yes, that's the one. In this day of the Ebola crisis, it's, I'll tell you, an actual case. A local county needed to have a certification for infectious disease control. And of course, the county didn't have the expertise for that, so they contact the university. The university refers the county to the School of Public Health, who then refers them to the infectious disease control. The principals between the county and the university, they come up with, some curriculum, some field exercise, some equipment. The principals basically work out the business terms, and then to close the deal, they would contact my office to do the public service contract, which that's what we lawyers do. We write contracts that are enforceable and clear, but it's absolutely a business contract.
So you
Yes.
come in at the end. What happens is somebody in the community reaches out to the university. The people in the university discuss it with them, work out what needs to be done, and then they come to you to put it into the right framework, to make it legal, because universities have a clear role in society, and some things are permitted and some things aren't. Public service is one of the things that is permitted.
Absolutely. In fact, it is one of the three fundamental pillars of higher education. There is education, teaching and learning, academics, there is research, and there is public service. And this contracting operates under that pillar of public service. Another example, if we can, in the next slide, which I love, is math and science education for youngsters. You wouldn't think a university would be in that business, but we are, and we invest in creating the basic curriculum, and then we might enter into a contract with a national publisher who might invest $1 million. We would then invest $1 million of services to build this great leading edge, totally robust curriculum, which would then be marketed by the publisher around the United States and around the world.